Greetings, salutations, and welcome to the Krieger Cast. I'm your host, Patrick Krieger, and today I'm just going to talk with you guys for a little bit. As you well know, the world's kind of going through some chaos right now, and I decided it was best to get going home. And so, to that end, I live out in the woods, far deep into the woods, and it's kind of hard to get there this time of year. First, I had to drive almost 2,000 miles and going through all sorts of precautions right now in order to make sure not only that I didn't get infected by anything, but that I also didn't infect anyone, as we should all be doing right now, even though I feel fine and all that jazz, um, was interesting. I've never taken such a laborious road trip before. I was driving in my Dodge Challenger, so it was nice and comfortable, and pretty fuel efficient too. But that still did mean I needed to stop for gas a number of times, and every time I stopped, I was nervous, um, just because I didn't want to touch anything right now. I'm a bit of a germaphobe, and so this event we're going through wasn't particularly, or isn't particularly, my kind of thing, although I'm sure it's not your kind of thing as well. So I had to avoid contact with as much of the conditions outside as possible. I avoided touching keypads. After I touched the keypads and had to fill up my car, I would make sure to hand sanitize before I touched my phone or anything inside my car. And I also had to avoid going to the restroom. One of the rumors that's being spread around, take with grain of salt, whether you want to believe it or not, is that it can be spread from fumes when you go to the restroom, and that those are the most virulent forms of the virus. And so I didn't really want to go into a restroom that someone else had used recently, so I've been avoiding those as much as possible. I also couldn't stop to eat. Um, well, a lot of people are saying go out there and support your local restaurants and all that, and frankly, those restaurants need your help. I only get food out right now if I can cook it again. So, for example, get a pizza, but then I'll still throw it in the oven myself, or something fried, and then I'll still throw it in the oven myself, just to give myself that little bit of comfort. Well, on a road trip, you can't do that. So there was no option about getting food on this trip. Prepackaged things, didn't want to muck with it because I didn't want to be touching stuff, didn't want to be dealing with cashiers. So I made some sandwiches and hit the road, as it were. And after a couple hours, well, frankly, I was out of food. I was out of drink. And this was now becoming a painful thing. I had plenty of Gatorade and whatnot that I could have drunk, but for some reason I was being pig-headed and refused to. I think it had something to do with the fact that I didn't want to stop to use the restroom. So I was on the road for hours and hours and hours, and I want to caution y'all, if you ever take long distance road trips, make sure you know your limits and make sure you're aware of what's going on. If you have any sort of delay in reaction or thoughtlessness, pull over, sleep. It's not worth it, to not only kill yourself but others if an accident happens due to falling asleep on the road. I'm a night owl, so I was able to keep going real easy through the night, and then I was able to keep going through the morning. And unfortunately, when I arrived at my destination, as was expected, tons of snow on the ground. And like I said, I expected this. So I was expecting to, park my car in town, sleep in town without interacting with people because, like I said, I didn't want to go to, say, like a friend's house or to a motel, either of which I could either infect or be infected with what's going on. That's the whole point of this shelter in place thing that's going on right now, this kind of soft quarantine that most of the world's going through, is to limit interactions. And if I'm going to do something, kind of seemingly reckless as travel during these times, I'm going to take every precaution necessary. So not interact with anyone. not go out of the car, not, do these things that I would normally do. So I was expecting to just park my car in a parking lot somewhere, sleep overnight, figure it out in the morning. But I decided, I've been checking the weather reports. The weather looks really good. Hasn't been snow in months. Maybe, just maybe, I can get to my house. No, I couldn't. But I ran into a buddy with a big four-wheel drive, and he's like, yeah, I can get to your house. I'm like, yeah, right. And sure enough, the guy went plowing through the snow, snow 2 feet deep in a lot of parts, but thankfully really soft and powdery, not icy. And he got up to my house, and he's like, yeah, I got up to your house and, cleared some stuff away, and, maybe you can get one of your rigs out. So I went and grabbed a four-wheel drive, and I'm like, man, I'm a, from California. I don't have much experience in the snow. I'm really nervous about this. And he goes, don't be. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And I followed him back down to my other car, and sure enough, I did just fine. Loaded everything into my four-wheel drive and made it almost back to my house. Made it within like 700 yards of my house. And in the deepest pocket of snow, my car center pointed, and it's stuck there now. I guess when I was going downhill, there was enough speed and enough whatnot going on that, it just kind of glided over the snow. But going uphill, those angles, whatever, car's stuck. Car's still stuck, by the way. And this was yesterday. So, all right. Got my stuff in this car, like 700 yards away, downhill, in snow. What do? Well, the obvious. I went back to my house and, got things squared away there. Tried to call my folks to let them know that I'm all right. Tried to call my friends to let them know I'm all right, and no such luck. Phone lines are down. Internet is down. Television is down. So I'm out here on my own. And I'm like, okay. I've been going strong now for over 40 hours, but haven't had much caffeine, haven't had any food in a while, and just had to shovel snow and trudge through the snow. This has been a really tough day, but it isn't over. I have all sorts of stuff in my car that cannot freeze. We're talking, canned goods, which, by the way, if you've ever frozen canned goods, man, not really the best thing to do. If you're ever curious, take a can of like Denti Moore or some sort of stew, freeze it, and then unfreeze it, and you'll end up with this like sludge. It's quite unappetizing. So I didn't want that happening to my canned goods. So I'm like, at least I got to get my canned goods out. Well, then I have all these, sparkling waters because I'm that sort of guy. I like my La Croix, which is apparently the way you're supposed to pronounce that place because it's from the town of La Croix, not from LaCroix, which is like a French pronunciation of the same word. I realize it is a French word, but apparently the locals call it La Croix, and since it's from La Croix, I think you should call the product La Croix. But the product itself wants to be called LaCroix. It sounds better, at least to them. But that's a tangent for another time. Anyway, so I had my sparkling waters, and I had my canned goods, and I had all these things that I didn't want, getting damaged by the cold. I also had my computer equipment and some cameras, and I'm like, oh man, don't want those to freeze either. Cold isn't good for electronics, especially going from cold to hot, because if you take something that's cold and you bring it into a warm environment, you get condensation, and condensation is water, and water in electronics, not really good, especially deep in the electronics. So you'd never really want to do that. So I'm like, okay, I have like at least 5 or 6 trips that I have to take from my car to my house, what have you. Turns out that this ended up taking me like 2 hours. I'm exhausted, still haven't eaten, still haven't had anything to drink. And, now I'm in pain from having hiked in the snow. And I do my trips and I get my basic stuff inside my house. And I give the phone another try, and the phone is still down, but, it's saying, hey, you can still call 911 if you really have to. which I thought was kind of an odd message. And I always hung up at that point. So I decided, what does it say after that? Well, it's a help number. So I called that help number, and they said, yeah, man, you know, your phone's supposed to be turned back on, but it doesn't get turned on until tomorrow. And the guy was kind enough to patch me into my parents, and so I could let them know that I survived. Every day out here on the edge is kind of risky, not really if you're smart about it, but, like if you trip or fall or something like that, someone kind of needs to know to send help. So I did that. Got to talk to my folks. My phone's now working. Internet should be working in a day or two, so you'll probably get this short little podcast sort of thing in a day or two. I'm kind of jokingly calling them like broadcasts from the bunker as we wait out, as some people call it, the Wu flu or Corona Chan or COVID-19 or whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to place judgment on what you call it. As we wait that out, I decided, hey, I unfortunately have things to do this summer. There's a lot of talk about control of the movement of people. So I'm like, yeah, this is really an important thing for me to do, to go to my house so that I don't leave it, alone for too long. And I'll just shelter in place there. That's why I took all those precautions on that road trip. I really didn't want to get sick somewhere along the road, and I definitely didn't want to get anyone else sick, even though, like I said, I feel fine. They're saying a lot of people are asymptomatic during this, so you don't know, as it were. I might do a video on that, all the rumors and how this advanced, and how I got into following this, because I've been following this back since around about Christmas, and I've been worried about it more or less since Taiwan started locking stuff down and checking people early January. So anyway, I might do that if there's some sort of interest in it, but I just wanted to do these little videos to kind of let my friends and family know what's going on with me and keep them updated. Today, since today's today and not yesterday, I'm just to let you know what I did. I spent the bulk of my day going back and forth from my car. Just because I was able to get the stuff that would freeze out of my car last night didn't mean I got everything out of my car last night, because you really don't want to be trudging around in the snow, at night up here. There's all sorts of things in the woods, and it's not really the time or place you really want to be out. So I got the critical stuff to my car, or to my house, and then I waited for today. Spent the bulk of my day going back and forth to the car. Couldn't carry much. Probably would be in total like 6 trips if I could carry everything in my hands, but I couldn't, because I'm walking in deep snow. I want to be able to focus on what I'm doing and not be straining underneath the weight. And I also knew that I would have to be doing a ton of trips, and I also knew that what if I fell, and I needed to be able to catch myself. So I just decided, you know what, I'm only going to take one item in each hand and just do this, just power through, do it. And I do have to say, every time I walked in my car, it became a little bit easier, because as I walked, the snow's melting, and so it's becoming easier and easier to walk. I expect my car to be freed in 2 or 3 days. We'll see about that. We'll see about that, because it is center pointed on the snow. It's kind of keeping the snow from melting. That sunshine can't shine down on it and keep it from whisking all that snow away. But I do have to say, there's probably no place I'd rather be for a time like this. Miles and miles and miles from the nearest towns and cities, and just out in the woods. I feel pretty safe up here, at least from the Wu flu, as it were. There's other things, other risks for living out here, but those I'm used to, more or less. Those I'm used to. Kind of funny, for as much as I live out here, and as much as I've dealt with snow, I've never shoveled snow. Never really had a reason to. Always gone before the snow gets too deep, and I've come back in the deep snow, but The deep snow typically has layers of ice in it, and I'm sorry, without a real shovel, you're not going to crack through that. And even if you could crack through it, it's a ton of work. So I'd rather just snowshoe on top of it and just wait it out. Um, the snow here is actually fairly fresh, and we had almost all of it melt before, so it's this light powdered sugar sort of substance, and yeah, it's clearing pretty quickly, but it was real easy to shovel when I needed to get my truck out. So anyway, I'm gonna be doing these semi-frequently. I'm gonna be talking about different things, what I'm doing in my life, and let me know what you think of this. I know it's a pretty standard format, kind of like your typical blog sort of, brief podcast sort of thing. But I just figured while we're all locked inside, letting the great plague pass us by, at least hoping that it passes us by, it's good to focus on projects and hobbies and tasks and things you've been pushing off. And, as diligent viewers of this channel know, I haven't had the best upload schedule. And, I got a ton of stuff that needs to be edited and put out for you guys. I got some great interviews that I just haven't done anything with. And that's not the right thing. So a lot of it has to do with anxiety. Anxiety is a big issue for a lot of people, and I know it is for me. And part of my anxiety is opening up to my audience, and talking with y'all is actually a little bit hard. And I'm hoping that these will help get me over that. That they're a little more personable, and practice does make perfect. I had a piano teacher who used to say, "Practice makes permanent." And I do actually agree with that. Practice is useless if you're not striving to be better, or at least, as close to perfect as possible. If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, it ain't going to get any better. Constantly improve, constantly push forward. On that note, you may have noticed that the audio quality took a severe dump. Well, that's because I had to leave my nicer mic at home, or, I had to leave my nicer mic I wasn't able to bring it with me. So this is my the first mic that I got for this sort of thing. I got this mic years ago when one of my friends and I were like, "Hey, let's record some gameplay footage and record what we're talking about so we can share it with people." You know who you are. So I bought this mic because it was dirt cheap, and the guy said it was pretty decent. And I do have to say, I think it is pretty decent. It's a lot better than the built-in microphones on most devices. The other advantage is it's tiny. It's the size of a golf ball. It's the Samsung Meteor. And if you just use this and you're good about your audio levels and all that, most people will say it sounds fine. But it only sounds fine until you get used to better stuff. So I may be ordering another mic. Depending on if I actually keep up with this and keep going, that way I can just leave a mic and not really worry about it. But expect some kind of cool stuff coming out soon. Maybe not some of the older stuff, because I don't know if I can really edit it while I'm up here, and I sure can't upload it to the internet while I'm up here. Way too much data. But I'm hoping to do some more exciting videos, more conversational style videos. So expect that from me in the future. Anyway, guys, please do stay safe. I might give like a tips and tricks video that's from my completely uneducated but carefully observing point of view on like little things that you maybe should be doing at this time. Like I said, I'm not a professional in this by any sort. I'm just germophobic. So I might do one of those tomorrow. Depends on if anything interesting happens tomorrow. So, until next time, dear audience, see you out there.